You are listening to The Mona K Show on KXEG 1280 AM and 96.1 FM in Phoenix, Arizona.
But we're back. I'm so excited. You know, with this music's making me want to dance.
Oh, yeah.
Well, guess who's in studio? For those of you that can see us, who just walked in, we are so honored. We are so extremely honored at the Mona K Show to have with us former Graham County Sheriff. And I'm kind of a little intimidated, Sheriff. Sheriff Richard Mack is in the house. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, don't be intimidated. I'm one of the good guys.
You are, huh? Yeah. You know what? Were you just listening to the speech of the Hungarian Prime Minister?
It was very powerful.
He
reminds me of me.
Right? Seriously. I mean, it reminds us of all of us that want the rule of law. We're not racist. We're not against each other. We want to follow the rule of law.
Right.
And I know that you're a constitutionalist at heart.
Totally.
And so am I. You know, as an immigrant, I always tell people, my mother who brought us here was an American. Mm-hmm. She was born in Iraq, but she was an American before coming to America because we believed in the values of America.
Right.
Long before we became, Americans. So I just want to give everybody a background of what's going on. On December 8th, 2017, former incumbent Trent Franks, who's a congressman, Republican, announced his resignation from Congress. A special election to fill the seat will be required, of course, and as the resignation will take place more than 6 months prior to the next election, of course. Right. Arizona's holding, as a result, a special primary and general election to fill the seat, the 8th Congressional District, CD8. House seat vacated by Representative Trent Franks. The special primary election, and I want to announce it once again because a lot of people are asking, when is the primary? The primary's February 27th.
Correct.
And early ballots have already gone out. So for those of you that have listed yourselves or get early ballots, you should check your mail. Don't be like me. I only pick up my mail once a week, which is bad. Mm-hmm. Pick up your ballots. They're in your mail. Vote. Early voting has already started. And the special election is, of course, to be held on April 24th in 2018. To be part of the program, if you have questions for Sheriff Mack, please message us, Facebook, because we're watching, we're going live, or just text us on private message. But on the second half of the program, we are so honored and truly honored to meet you and to have you on the program. So I'm going to greet you like I greet all of my guests here as family. In the Aramaic word for peace, which is very similar to the Jewish word shalom, it's actually shlama.
Shlama.
So, Sheriff Mack, shlama to the program.
Oh. Mil gracias.
To the next language that you know of.
Yeah, I speak English and Spanish and a little bit of French and a little bit of Portuguese.
Okay.
So I actually, when I went to college, I was studying languages first, but then I got into law enforcement and I went that route. But my degree is actually in Latin American Studies.
Really?
Yeah, and
so that's great to have, especially living in Arizona. We really need that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I use it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me give a brief bio. I really don't want to go in too much because I want to get to the policies. I want to get to the.
Well, let's make certain of one thing.
Go ahead.
That everybody listening knows that I am a candidate for Trent Franks' position.
Absolutely.
He very abruptly left.
Resigned.
And so
you are one of 12.
I am one of 12, and probably the only one in a lot of unique ways, which we'll go over.
We'll go over. I'm just going to go through the headlines, and of course, it titles in his website. And if you want to visit Sheriff's website, of course, it's simply, www.sheriffrichardmack.com. So just sheriffrichardmack.com, and you'll see all of this laid out. Champion of constitutional values, and then I'm just going to read the bullet points, led Supreme Court victory for state sovereignty. Author of several books on freedom, government, and gun control. Consultant on constitutional issues. Tea Party activist, public speaker, crusade for liberty, trainer in constitutional issues for law enforcement. And I just want to mention that your father was an FBI agent as well?
Right here in Arizona.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, why did you decide to run?
Well, I've always been an activist. I've always been interested in government, and I'm all about changing the horrible things that are going on. Mm-hmm. And so I saw this as an opportunity to do just that, to continue my work to restore the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. That's what I've been about. I've dedicated my life to that. And I mean, just as you mentioned, I sued the federal government. I actually sued the Clinton administration.
And I'm going to talk about that next.
And I've just carrying from there. I hate public corruption. I hate the abusive government. The rule of law is for everybody, just as you mentioned. And if we would just respect the rule of law in this country, but there seems to be one rule for the peasants or the people of this country, and then another rule for the Clintons and for the elitists in Washington, D.C. And far too often, those elitists are senators and congressmen who don't follow the rule of law, who don't respect our Constitution.
Who forget, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but who forget, because this is, I'm frustrated with that.
Yeah.
Who forget who put them there and what they are there to go do. I mean, they're supposed to work for us and our agenda, not their own.
Right, and the agenda that they're supposed to work for is the one established by our founders.
We the people.
In the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And I don't think anybody running against me really knows what the rule of law is. I certainly, the four mainstream Republican establishment candidates do not. And the overall purpose of government, they don't know it. And it in fact, it's not even in the Constitution itself. It's from the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Absolutely.
And then the next line, there's 10 words after that. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. I really like the next part, too, where it says, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, which you just alluded to. They're supposed to be there working for us. But even, they can't say, well, I did that for you. The reason I have all these welfare programs and entitlement programs was for you. So I'm doing my job. No, there's a rule book. Your promise to service and work for us is within the confines of the Constitution, which they promised in God's name that they would uphold, defend, and obey. So this is why we are
That's their oath. They raised their right hand to say that.
Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution requires that oath by law, that they swear an allegiance to the Constitution. And so that's how they serve us best, by protecting our God-given rights, our innate rights, our natural rights, which is part of their job. In fact, it is their job.
And I know that I read somewhere that you carry the Constitution with you, and I see it in your pocket.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, the Washington Post just did an article about me, and they showed a picture of me, and yes, there's my pocket Constitution.
Yeah.
Why don't we all carry it? Isn't that the bulwark of American ideas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There you go. Now, you became famous and kind of just just exploded.
Yeah.
During the Bradley bill.
Brady,
I'm sorry, Bradley. I'm thinking of the Super Bowl. There you go.
There
Brady.
You go.
The Bradley bill that you opposed.
Brady bill.
Yeah, the Brady. I keep saying that.
I know, Brady bill.
Oh my God, Brady.
It is like Tom Brady,
Yeah,
but it was named after James Brady, who worked for President Reagan.
Yes. John Hinckley, who shot
Reagan.
You opposed. This bill was actually created, and it was signed by President Clinton. In 1993.
Right.
You opposed it on the same day that it took effect, which was February the 28th, 1994.
Correct.
Okay. And with one supporter, and I want to mention this, he only had one supporter that said, go for it, and that was your wife.
Correct. And then after that, Governor Symington of Arizona, the governor of Arizona, which, and quite honestly, if my wife had said no, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And it's so important to have family behind you, because it empowers you, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And this was a monumental case, because it was written by Justice Scalia. It was a Supreme Court decision, and probably the first one in a long time that actually strengthened the 10th Amendment and the office of the sheriff. And so the federal government came in and said, you're going to work for us for free.
Yeah.
I said, there's two problems with that. One, I don't do gun control. I took an oath to the Constitution, so I have to obey my oath and keep my oath. Secondly, the federal government cannot tell your sheriff or anybody else in your state what to do. Do you know that the federal government is not our boss? And I think I'm the only one running.
Say that again.
The federal government is not our boss. My decision says that. In fact, it says, quote, but the state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? But don't you wish more that your federal legislature knew that? And I'm the only one running that really knows that.
Do you think it's really that they don't know it, or they just don't want to apply it?
Well, they don't know it because they've gotten so used to their political agendas that you just mentioned. And so they are so bound to get reelected that they don't really care if they know this or not.
Interesting thing about the bill. The suit contended that the federal government had no authority or jurisdiction to compel or force any sheriff in the United States to comply with any mandate, funded or not. Sheriff Mack also objected, and I'm reading from an article that was from the freedomphoenix.com when you celebrated your 10th anniversary in 2007. It's an online magazine, and this article, I want to give credit where credit is due. Ernest Hancock was written by him. And I'm reading this, and he says, Sheriff Mack also objected to being forced to participate in a federal gun control scheme, but the suit had no standing on the Second Amendment ground.
It didn't.
Now you have, and I'm going to read the text to both of them. 10th Amendment full text says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And the Second Amendment text says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Two very powerful amendments. In fact, the Second and the 10th, I think, are the biggest checks and balances that is provided in the Constitution. But the 10th Amendment means what it says. All powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states or to the people. That's it. The federal government does not get to self-appoint powers. They have no authority to do that. They're not allowed to do that. It's against the law for them to do it. Yet we've allowed them to do that about 5,000 times now. And they just continue to steal and usurp authority, and constitutionally it's very destructive. And not only that, but the people in Washington, D.C. seem to keep going along with it, and the people in the state of Arizona have continued to go along with it. Why? Because they want the money from the federal government. And little do the people in Washington and in Arizona understand that we send them the money. The money starts here, and we need the state legislature to toughen up and be more responsible fiscally in defending our state against federal intrusions.
Yeah. You know, I want to continue this constitutional value that you have, which I absolutely love, because as I was looking at it, you are totally a champion of the Constitution. Having to fight this and winning in the Supreme Court. My God, what did it feel like to be in the Supreme Court?
No other sheriff has done that in history.
Yeah, exactly.
No other sheriff. Okay.
And so what did it feel like to be able to take it that far to the Supreme Court and to get that call and to say, congratulations, you won? That is huge.
Well, CBS News called me that morning and told me I won. They had already paid me to be in a hotel in Tucson so I could interview them quickly, and they called me and said, have you heard? And I go, no, you're the first caller.
Because you won on an appeal, because it actually, you lost.
Yeah, because we lost at the Ninth Circuit. Big surprise there.
Yeah.
And that's why Arizona's trying to get out of that circuit, because it's the most liberal circuit in the country. But it really was what I've done my whole life, and it's really the reason why I'm running for CD8 Congress, because we've got to get back to those values.
Yes.
And if we don't, America's going to die. Our Constitution is our foundation. If we let the foundation go, the rest of the country's going to go. And I will tell you right now, Mona, we're not in trouble because we follow the Constitution too strictly in this country. Far from it. And my whole agenda has been, let's get back to that. And are there wonderful things that Trump has done? I'm going to say, oh, yes, but it hasn't gone far enough yet.
Yeah.
And really draining the swamp. Can you tell me why we have all these criminal organizations in Washington, D.C. still in effect, like the IRS? How many crimes does the IRS have to commit
I was
going to
ask you. I was going to ask you about that, seriously, because I know that, it's amazing to me. Speaking of law enforcement, when you reflect on the state of the union, state of our country, and some who I've spoken to will express and say, oh, it's not my father's America. And I know that your father was in the FBI. And so I want to, with all the controversies that you just mentioned, everything that's going on, it's so shameful to watch the news right now and to hear all these revelations. Is this your father's FBI?
No, not even close. And after J. Edgar Hoover left the FBI, it became just another Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. It's been politicized. The politicians control it now. And Hoover just never allowed that. And this is where I come in, because I do know and understand that. And it's time to really, when President Trump said drain the swamp, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But he needs backup. And who better than a sheriff to provide backup to our president in making sure that we really do drain the swamp? We have got to drain the swamp. The American people don't trust the IRS. The American people are scared to death of the IRS. The IRS has committed thousands and thousands of crimes over the past 5 or 6 decades. They've been used as political hitmen. The IRS and the FBI have been used as political hitmen. Sometimes, like Nixon, used them against each other.
Yeah.
Nixon was trying to get anybody to be on his side to save him from Watergate. But this FISA memo and the
Unbelievable.
shenanigans of the
Oh.
FBI. Nobody trusts any of this, and so we've really got to clean house, and we've got to drain the swamp. And it includes the FBI, but it also includes the FDA and the EPA and the BLM and USDA and all this. I mean, it goes on and on, because
Yeah.
these agencies have become powers unto themselves. There's 3 million federal employees. Nobody's watching them. And the DEA commits all sorts of what? I'm trying to be nice about this, because they had sex parties in Colombia, and the prostitutes
That's
were
so
provided.
embarrassing.
Were provided by the cartels,
Yeah.
who they're supposed to be fighting. And you know what happened to those DEA agents? Nothing.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they didn't
and
even
we
get
need
fired.
we need to restore confidence in our
Exactly.
departments and generate back the respect that when at the time that your father served. And so I want to go on to who you're running against, as far as not on the Republican side.
Right.
CD8 has never had a Democratic challenger, I should say, to former Republican Congressman Trent Franks while he held office.
Right.
There are 3 Democrat candidates that are running. I've got Musselwhite, I've got Tipper Many, and then we've got Westbrook. How do you feel your chances are against them if you become the nominee? And by the way, if you become the nominee and if you win, you're going to be my congressman, because I live in CD8.
Oh, wonderful.
But I also want you to talk about the fact that you wrote a letter to the Arizona Republic, and I'm going to quote, regarding the rigged debate that not only didn't follow the Federal Election Commission, but they didn't follow their own rules
Criteria.
in the debate.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Correct.
they, by the way, they backed up Dr. Haral Tipper-Neni as the Democratic Congresswoman that's running, the candidate. They backed her up. They're endorsing her.
They're
I
endorsing
don't-
the Democrat?
Yeah, they're endorsing the Democrat.
Not one of those mainstream Republican wonderful whatever they are?
Yeah.
Okay, you know,
And
really,
I hope I'm not wrong. If I'm not, please, I'm going to check it out again. But I did read that the Arizona Republic did endorse a Democratic candidate.
I'll be really honest with you about your question. I'm really not concerned about the Democrat candidates right now. I'm running against 11 other Republicans. 4 of them are formidable only because they've had prior experience
Yes.
and they're establishment machine candidates. And quite frankly, I call those 4 Tweedledee, Tweedledum, Tweedledo, Tweedleday, because they really are the same. None of them have any constitutional expertise. One of them actually claims to be a constitutional conservative, yet you can't see that anywhere in her record. None of them are ready to really go there and make a difference. They're go along to get along politicians. They are mainstream politicians. They've never stood for anything. They've never made any difference. They are go along to get along, and that's all that's going to happen. If you want somebody that's going to stand for American ideals and with the courage of conviction to do these sort of things that actually our founding fathers did in creating this country, there's only one candidate, and it's very clear. And I'll tell you what, I just got endorsed 2 days ago by the Republican Liberty Caucus, and they only have one criteria for their candidates. Which one is most liberty-oriented?
Yeah.
I got it. Not these others. It will not be the Democrat later, and it won't be any of these moderate candidates that I'm running against right now in the Republican primary.
And I also need to add, you were inducted into the NRA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, some of my opponents say, well, I got an A rating from the
Yeah.
NRA. Those are easy to get, okay? How many of them have ever been inducted into the NRA Hall of Fame?
I was amazed to see that. Seriously. So
Well, I did. I got it.
let me ask you about DACA. I know that all of the candidates running are against DACA, as you
Well,
are.
so they say.
Yeah. And but I want to hear your view, being a sheriff, a member of the law enforcement that has
Yeah.
probably more firsthand experience than anyone because you've seen it, and it's most effective because we live here in Arizona. What's your viewpoint? How are you going to support the president's
You're right,
agenda on
Mona.
that?
I have a very distinct
Yes.
view on this. And first of all, I'll approach it from a crime standpoint. Crimes have consequences. And sometimes they're very tragic. And sometimes they're very sad. But I'm sorry, they do. And not one taxpayer from the United States of America should pay one dime into helping people who got here illegally. I don't care your parents' fault, grandparents' fault, your fault. I don't care. Follow the law. There we are. We're talking about the rule of law again.
That's right.
Follow the law. Nancy Pelosi doesn't think we need to follow the law.
Sanctuary City.
Yeah, let's just sanctuary city.
Just like with this NFL player that just got killed by a drunk driver that was deported twice and came back.
They don't care.
No.
Nancy Pelosi didn't say a word about that in her 8-hour stupid speech yesterday.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, Republicans have helped create this problem also.
Yes.
Why do we have $21 trillion debt
We
in
need
America?
we need to look in the mirror and hold ourselves accountable.
Exactly. We have $21 trillion of debt because both Democrats and Republicans have caused it. We have DACA and a lack of security at the border because of Democrats and Republicans. If you want President Trump to have a strong backup officer, somebody to really have his back
Yes.
in doing these things and taking them higher than he has done. We need more tax cuts than he did. We need more security at the border. If we don't, and this is another thing about the border, if we don't stop freebies to illegal aliens, then you can build as many walls as you want to. They're still going to come here. Do not pay them to come here anymore.
SheriffRichardMack.com. Please go on his website and be aware, be diligent. No, the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Do not perish for lack of knowledge. Understand the values. Understand who stands for what. Understand the issues. You know what? It's a very important election. Sheriff Mack, thank you so much. Don't forget to go vote. As an illegal immigrant, that is the greatest liberty that I gained, was the fact that I can vote. That was a right stripped from me. And for those that could not vote, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I love your position on the Constitution. Look at that. That Constitution's in his pocket. I love that. There you go. Go vote. We love you. Until the next time. Goodbye.
Paid for by the Sheriff Richard Mack for Congress Committee.